Hello everybody! I am so excited to be working with Cedar and working on the Bead and Thrive campaign. This is the beading kit that you will receive in the mail. There is 3 different options to bead. This is the business card of who is supplying the beading kits. This is the instruction package. It tells you everything that you can do and everything that comes along in the kit. You get a Nymo thread and a needle and 10 different colors beads. You get some opaque, some translucent, some matte beads in there. A little bit of everything for your first project. Now, I'm going to use a piece of paper towel as not everybody has a bead mat. Now, this is just going to keep your beads from rolling all over your table. So, paper towel you can use a towel, anything really that you want to sit your beads on just to keep them from rolling around. Now, I like to lay out all my beads so that I can see exactly what I am going to be making and pick out my color palette. Next is I like to grab a arm's length of thread and make sure you have a good pair of scissors. These were not good scissors. And then we are going to tie a knot. For my knots, I like to tie it around 3 times and then just pull tight. And then I like to cut off the end close to the knot. Again, you want good scissors. These were not good. And then I like to use a lighter and just singe the end to make sure that knot's not going to come out. Now, the easiest way to thread your needle is to put your eye of your needle over your thread and pinch it and push up at the same time. And it'll push it right through the eye. And that's how I like to start. Now, you can either start in the middle of your project. I personally like to start on the edge of whatever I'm going to be beading so that I can do a border around it first. So I'm going to start on the edge. So we're going to pull our thread all the way through so that our knot is hitting the back of the pelin. We're going to pick up 6 to 7 beads. Any color you want. I'm going to pick the color yellow for my center. Now what I like to do next is lay them out and see exactly where they're going to fall. So I like to use my finger, usually my nail or the edge of my finger if you don't have nails. And what you want to make sure is that your needle is just a little bit farther than where your beads end. You want to make sure that you leave a little gap, as you can see right here, ahead of your beads, so that when you're tacking down, the thread thickness is going to push those beads over a little bit every time. So you want to make sure that you take an account for the spacing of the thread in between. So we're going to come up beside every 2 beads. So we're going to come up beside 2 beads. You're going to pull it tight. And then you're going to come back down on the other side of those 2 beads. Now I like to make sure that I'm on that black line. So that everything stays where it's supposed to. So you're going to come up beside the next set of 2 beads and then go back down over top of them on that black line and push all the way down. Next, you're going to come up at the very end of their beads that you just put down. And now this is what's going to keep them all together to get its shape. We're going to come back up through, nice and close, and we're going to go through our beads. So this is what ties them together and starts your next line to continue on with your color. Get that last bead on in there. And there's your first little row. Now we're going to pick up another set of beads, so 6 to 7 beads, whatever you like working with. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did all over again. So we're going to lay out our beads, see where they end. We're going to take our needle and go just a little bit farther ahead and go down. We're going to come up on our black line and then go back down on the other side of our beads to make sure that it's tacked down. And then we're going to go back and move to the next set of 2 beads. We're going to come right back up. And then go right back down. Now I like to use my nail if the thread isn't going where it's supposed to go, just to kind of guide it, just to make sure that it goes where I want it. And again, we're going to come right back up on the other side of our beads. And then back over top and down on the other side. And we're starting to get that circle shape. And we're going to come right back up, over top, and then down again. Now we're going to come up a little farther back, and now we're going to connect both of those sets together now that we just did. So it's all one now. So we're going to go through all of our beads. And this is what's going to give it its shape to keep it in a circle. So it won't look like a real circle until it's all connected. So it might look a little wonky right now, that's okay. It'll still turn into a circle. And now we're ready for our next set of beads. So again, we're going to grab our 6 beads, 7 beads, and then do it all over again. For this center point, we're going to be starting with our first texture look. So what we're going to do is grab 1 bead, put it on, and then we're going to go right back down right beside where we came up. And we're going to do this with only 1 bead each time. So we're going to bring our needle back up right beside it. Make sure we pull tight. Grab a bead on the end of our needle. And then we are going to go right down right beside it again. And we are going to continue doing that until the entire thing is full. And grab 1 bead. And then put it right down again right beside it. You want to make sure that you keep your beads nice and close together so that there's no gaps in between them. You also have the option of coloring your picture before you start beading it. That way you won't see any white if you do miss any. And that's also an option that you guys can use. So again, 1 bead on, right beside where we came up. There we go. And we're just going to continue doing this until the whole circle is filled. Now you want to make sure that you have just 1 layer of beads down here. We don't want them pushing up or anything, so we just want to make sure it's nice and close. So that they're just nicely tight together, but not popping up. Add 1 bead, and then go right back down right beside where you came up. And for the very last one, this is my favorite part to watch. It's so satisfying to see that last bead go in. And there's your first texture. I just love the way that looks in the center. It actually makes it look like little pieces of pollen. So now we're going to have to re-thread our needle because our thread is too short. So we are going to put our thread underneath a couple of our stitches, just like that. Then we are going to hold it and we are going to wrap down our thread around our needle 2 or 3 times, and you're going to hold tight. And then what you're going to do is pull your needle through with your thread. Make sure that you hold it tight there, and then you're going to have a little knot that gets created. So now all we have to do is cut it off, and then I like to just singe the end. And now it's ready for our new ones. Now our knot is all done and our center is completed. Now we are going to move on with a new thread. Put our knot up against the petal and pull tight. We're going to start our first petal. I have chosen the color purple to go with to do the outline. You can of course pick whatever color you like. And we are going to grab 6 to 7 beads and do our little routine all over again. Again, you can take more beads, you can take less, whatever you're comfortable with working with. We're going to lay them out, see where they fall, and then we're going to tack down our needle just a little bit ahead of those to leave space. There we go. Now we're going to come down our 2 beads, stay on our black line. We're going to come up. Now we are going to push our beads over a little bit so that they stay on that black line also. And there's our first tack for our petal. And now we are going to do that again. Go down 2 beads. Come on up. And then go right back down. And then we're going to do our last set of 2. We'll come right back up. And then come back down over top of it. Make sure we pull tight. Now we are going to come up at the end of our petal right there. And we are going to connect all those beads together now. So we are going to come through them so that we can continue on adding to our petal. Now we are going to do the same thing and grab some more beads. Now this last little part, I am trying to figure out if I like it set up like this one, but if you can tell, it kind of gives it a weird edge. So that means that there's too many beads on my string. You'll see it just kind of looks kind of weird, like it's not sitting properly. So I ended up taking off 1 bead, which left me with the right amount of beads. And again, we are just going to continue doing the same thing every 2 beads. We're going to come right back up from below, over top, and on the other side, trying to stay on our black line to keep everything nice and straight. And if you see there, I actually missed my string. So I'm just going to do it all over again. Come all the way back up and come right back down. Now we are going to connect all of our beads together and go through them so that they keep our nice little petal shape. And there's our petal. Now the inside of this petal is going to be a different shape for each one, for the inside anyways. So this one, I'm going to use my pink and purple translucent beads that came in our package. And I'm just going to pick them up randomly. There's no pattern or anything for these ones. I'm going to start in my one corner and I'm going to follow the shape of my circle. So I was short one bead there, so I have to add one more bead on, and we're going to go down to the other side, and we're going to tack down in the corner, and we're going to pull it tight. You can see that we followed that nice little pattern there. So we're going to come up beside our two beads, and then we are going to tack down. We're going to move over, come up between our two beads again, and then we are going to tack down once again over top. And then at the end, we're going to come up, and then we are going to go through all of our beads, pulling everything together. And there's our first line in our petal. So now we are going to come up beside the beads at the end and do that all over again. We're going to load up our needle. See how many we're going to need. Now when I went to tack that one down, it popped up a little bit, so that means that there's too many beads. So what I do is I take my needle off my thread and I pull it out, and I take one bead off and then rethread my needle and continue on with my beading. We're going to come up over top, come back down our first two beads, and move over two beads, come up, again going over right beside that and tacking those two down. Now this one, I only moved over one bead just to make sure that corner is there. And there we have our second row in our first petal. We're going to come up right beside again and then go through the entire line of beads to keep them all nicely kept together so they keep in line there. And we're going to continue doing this for this petal. We'll come up to the next row. We're going to pick up some beads. So lay them flat, and there I can see I need 2 more. So I can add those 2 on, and it fits perfectly. So now I can tack down the entire line. We're going to come up to those end beads. It's 2 up, over top, and then right back down again. And then we're going to move over 2 beads and do it all over again. Now when you get to the end part, you can see that this area is too small to have the beads in the same direction. So what we're going to do is put the beads sideways so that the skinny part is in there. So we're just going to turn the bead sideways and just continue on with what we're doing. So stay beside our line. We'll get another bead. And then we can add 1 more in there. Now you don't want to overcrowd them because then your petal will start to lose its shape and it won't look like a petal. So 3 works out perfectly. And that is our first petal with our first design. Next, we are going to move on to our second petal, and we are going to put our 6, 7 beads on, move a little bit of ahead of our line on our black line, tack down, come back up, and continue on with what we did before. Now sometimes you'll end up with a little knot in your back and you won't realize it until you're gone a little bit. Now that might get in your way and you might get tangled up with it. So what I like to do is just use my lighter and just burn it so it's nice and flat there. That way it's not going to get in your way as you're beading. So our next petal, we are going to be doing a completely different look for this one. We are going to copy the same direction of the petal going all the way around in a semicircle. So we're going to use that, but continue doing our beading how we were doing before. We're going to tack down, come up 2 beads, go over top and then down. And again, you're going to move over 2 beads, and then again over top and tack down again. Now sometimes when we're following the curves and that, you might have to do every bead just to get it to stay in place, which is completely fine, whatever works for you. We're just going to keep continuing, tack down every 2 beads. And then we're going to come up at the end and then go through that entire row, pulling them all together. And then we are going to tie a knot in the back of our thread. And just like we did before, putting it underneath, wrapping it around twice, and then pulling it through. And making a little knot. Make sure it's tight. And then we are going to cut that off and burn the end with the lighter. Now we are going to get our next thread ready and continue on. So we are on our next row and we are going to just continue on doing the same thing. We'll go ahead of our row of beads. Come back 2 beads and then tack down. I think I did 1 bead on this one just to keep it in place. And then hold the beads back in place. Come over top of it and right back down. Hold it in place. Move over 2 beads and do it again. We'll hold our beads in place, come up and over top of them, and then go right back down to keep them in place. And come up the bottom and then go through that line of beads to continue on, adding on beads at the end. And just continue on grabbing some more beads. Now we ran into the same spot on the side where it's too small for a full bead, so we're going to turn our bead sideways and just put 2 in there. To fill up that little gap. And that is our second petal done. And you can see how it gives it a different look than the other one. Now our third one, you're going to take your line of beads and add 1 so it's a little bigger. And I put it right down the center. This one is going to be a raised petal. And I'm going to tack down just that one bottom bead. So then you're going to come down at the bottom. And this time we're going to go on a little bit of an angle when we tack down. So we're going to pick up a couple beads. I think I picked 3. And we're going to go on an angle this time. Oh, I did 4 of this one. To make sure that it's just got a little bit of a raise in it. We want this to look like a leaf. So then I'm going to go back down to the bottom, right beside it, so that each line comes out from the center of our leaf, all on an angle. And we're going to pick up some more beads. And I basically did one more than what would normally fit inside there so that it would raise it up a little bit. So there's 1 extra bead there. So that'll give it the little lift that I want. And there we are. It just adds a little more to it. Again, we're going to come back down to the bottom and do it all over again. Now my last little spot here, you can see there was one little spot over here that was still kind of missing it. So I just grabbed 1 bead and just fit it in that little spot. And there you can see our little raised petal. So that's 4 different styles of beading right there, including our center. That all give you different looks depending on what you want to go with. So the next one we are going to do for our next petal, you're going to outline it like you did before on the other ones. And then we get to the fun part. So this one is going to be just like we did for the very first one, but instead of only using 1 bead, we're going to use 2 beads. So we're going to come up right at the bottom, grab our 2 beads, and then go right back down right beside it where we came up. So that one bead is kind of up in the air. And then we're going to come right back up beside it and add our 2 beads. And then go right back down beside it so that there's 1 bead sticking up in the air. And you can see it just gives it a different look. Just added some texture to it so that it's not flat. You're going to start again, coming up, adding your 2 beads. Then you're going to come right back down. And you're just going to continue doing this, adding your 2 beads and then going right back down so one of them is sticking up in the air. And there's our second, or not our second, sorry. our fourth petal. It's got some texture to it and gives you a completely different look than the other petals. Now we are on our final petal. You're going to do your outline again. Go right ahead of it. And then come back 2 beads and tack down again. And then once you get your edging done, we will start filling in. Now for this one, I wanted to do just a straight up and down look. So you're just going to start at the bottom for your first straight line. Now since our petals are rounded a little bit, I left a little bit of a gap so we can fill that in afterwards. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we were just doing. Every 2, coming to the bottom, up and over and back down. Then coming up right below it and going through that line to keep it nice and straight. And we are going to start at the top this time. Go through right beside it. We are going to add on our beads. And lay them flat, see how many more we need. Now that they fit perfectly, we can tack it down right beside it and then come back up 2 beads down and tack it again. Now that you have all our petals done, what you can do, we have to get rid of this paper. So you can take your needle and score all the way around all your beadwork. And make sure you do the whole outline. And this just makes it a lot easier to take off. So I'm just scoring it all the way around what we just beaded. And then we are going to rip our paper off. Make sure we get all these little bits off because we don't want to see them in our work. And then once we get all those little bits off, we can cut it out with scissors. Now you want to make sure when you're cutting that you get nice and close to your beadwork, but not close enough that you're cutting any of your thread on the bottom. So this really helps if you have good sharp scissors. These scissors were not the greatest. I need to get a new pair. So after that, you're going to cut out your whole project. So when I am done that, my scissors left it all fairly looking. So I like to take my lighter and go around my edges just to clean them up. And get rid of any flyaways or random strings that are just there. It just gives it a cleaner look. And there is our flower. I'm just pulling out little bits of pieces of paper that I missed. And there's our flower. Now we have to edge it. So, and put our backing on. But there is our 5 different kinds of petals and our different center. Depending on what look you want, you can use that little tutorial. So now I found a piece of leather that I had, and I'm just going to take my piece and just trace it out with a pen all the way around it, and then I'm going to cut it out. Now, when you cut it out, you're going to want to make sure you cut inside your lines and make it just a little bit smaller, because as you're beading, you're going to be pulling on your leather and it's going to stretch it a little bit. Now, to start a new thread, and then we are going to put it in through our leather. And this is how I make it nice and tight towards my back. I'm going to go through my pellet on the edge into my hole that I made already, coming through for my knot, and I'm going to pull it tight. This is how I start my beadwork on all my edging. So now that it's nice and tight right there, I can grab my bead, and I'm going to use gray for this. I'm going to go through the same hole I just made and pull it tight. And then I'm going to come up from the bottom underneath it. And then I can add on to my beads, continuing on with my pattern. So next I'm going to grab a purple and a gray and add 2 beads onto it to continue. So I'm grabbing my purple and then my gray. And then I'm going to move over just a little bit, going through my pellet and through my leather. I'm going to pull it tight. And then come back up through the bottom of my gray bead. And then pull it tight. And then again, that's what it's going to look like all the way around. I'm going to add my purple and my gray bead. Go the same distance over and go through my pellet and my leather and pull it tight. And then come back up through the bottom of my gray bead. And then we are going to pull it nice and tight. So that is going to be our edging all the way around. So again, we're going to grab a purple and a gray bead. And then move the same distance over, going through our pellet, through our leather. And then we're going to come right back up through our gray bead again. And we are going to pull it nice and tight. Now this time, because we're in a little pocket here, we are only going to pick up 1 bead this time. So we are just going to grab a gray bead, because if we were to try to do the 2 beads, it would be too crowded in there and it wouldn't be enough room. So we're just going to grab our gray bead, go through our pellet and our leather, pull it all the way through so it's nice and tight. and then come back up through the bottom of our gray bead. Now, occasionally you're going to end up with knots in your thread, and the easiest way to get these out is to take your needle, push it through your knot, and then rub it against your finger back and forth. It will loosen your knot for you. And there you are, and your knot is gone. Simple as that. Now we're going to continue. I decided to add a little, almost like a little hook here, so I can hang this on a pendant. When I did it, I didn't move it over far enough, so I end up taking this off and doing it again just to move it over a little bit. But you can see when I pull it tight here, it's not quite centered to what I want. It's over to the side a little bit. It wasn't over enough for me, so I decided to take it apart and do it again. So I take my needle off and just pull it through. And I ended up getting a couple more knots. So I did my little trick again, just stick my needle through it and wiggle it, and it came right out. So I got it in the spot that I wanted. So I came back through the bottom of my gray bead and continued on with my pattern. Now on the other side, I decided just to have one gray bead beside it, so I do the same thing on this side so it's matching. So I pick up just one gray bead, and then come back up through the bottom of it. Now we're going to pick up our purple bead and our gray bead and continue on with our pattern. Now at the very end, you are going to just pick up a purple bead. Because your gray bead is already there from the beginning, you're going to go down, and there is going to be that little hook that you started at the very beginning to plant it, and you are going to put your needle through that and wrap your thread around your needle a couple times and pull it through so you have a knot right there. And you're going to pull it tight and then cut off your end, and then I like to singe my end again just to make sure that my knot doesn't come undone. And there you have it. Six different designs of beading. Nice leather back, edging. So let me know what way you decided to use it. Make sure to tag me in your videos. Make sure you subscribe.